Yes, okay. So we can also see this session later and enjoy that. So writing for the fire proceedings and maybe for some other scientific papers, hopefully. Let's get started. Yeah. Why are we doing this? In the last years, fire has grown and we have gotten more and more people writing papers, and we had many rejections and issues, especially. And taking part, and we always see the same mistakes, and so it's better to have one session where we can try to teach people a lot about typical mistakes, and then we avoid, hopefully, feedback and problems. And this led to really big issues in timing in the last 2 years. Even the current proceedings from 24 are not out yet, and this we cannot allow anymore. So we will need to exclude papers that are not on time. And being on time means completely ready with all the formal issues, completely fine. And so in order to get accepted, please take care of all the issues. Okay. Yeah. Typing, maybe somebody has already a question. But I guess I'll just go ahead. We start. Yeah, this will be available. I will also put that on a download with some material on academic writing that I have from another project. So that will be some info sheets for good AI prompting for texts and how to write a good introduction. There's also a nice video OER that we have from another project. So that's very useful from people really from writing education. Let's say they do that even much better than we do that. So be aware somewhere there will be a space on the FIRE website. We also put the templates. We didn't bring the templates yet and haven't sent them around because they keep also changing a lot recently. CEUR, where we publish, has changed their agreement, their copyright agreement due to AI issues, and therefore we really want to give it out where we hope it's stable. Okay. So this is also true. No? One paper does not fulfill the requirements. The entire proceedings get rejected. COR gives us very little time to submit. They're very tedious there. So we really need to make sure that people follow the instructions. Yeah, this is the overview, more or less, of the presentation, especially of the first part. In the literature, Debasis will come in, and then typical mistakes. Debasis will do some additional stuff, now also very useful. And questions, as I said, can be any time. First of all, what should be the structure of a good participation paper there for the FIRE proceedings? We should have an abstract, of course. Abstract should, by the way, typically not include references. It should just be a brief version of what did you do, not what is the task about, but what did really you do for your participation. An introduction, a short section introduction. Let's call it state of the art or research overview. And remember, this is a participation paper. It doesn't have to go very, very deep and doesn't have to be very extensive. That is not something we expect here. And most important is methodology. What did you want to achieve? What were your research questions? And how did you set up your experiments? And here the goal has to be somebody else who reads this paper could do exactly the same and get exactly the same results as you got. This should be the high-level benchmark, scientific reproducibility. Make sure that you describe so many details that somebody else can re-implement it. We'll come to that later. Then we have results. This is a descriptive part. This was our recall. This was our F1 measure, whatever track you participate. This was our bird score, if it's a whatever summarization task maybe. And then a discussion, that is the interpretation of what do these results mean? Are they good? Are they bad? Do they mean we don't have to try this model anymore? Or is this the best model for the task? That is the discussion. And then finally, a very short conclusion could contain future work, some ideas that you have after the task, and say, oh, we should have also tried this and that, based on our results. Okay, let's go through the sections. Introduction. I'll begin with a research issue. Well, that's sometimes already stated in the task description. Don't repeat that. Try, you want to use, maybe this is the task and you want to try whether this model or such a model works, or whether model A is better than model B. That is sufficient motivation and sufficient starting point for a participation paper. You can also begin with a quote of a key source. If there is some programmatic paper on the topic, you can say, I'm citing somebody, some opinion there that I can bring up. Or you bring in some interesting statistics, right? We have, if you work on hate speech, for example, you could say, oh, we have so and so many things on the platforms these days. We can see that in the transparency database. Number had never been so high. Something like that can be with a good citation, can be a really good starting point. There's also some links here that can be useful in case you don't have a good idea for your introduction. State-of-the-art section, right? So first, some don't do's and then some positive, what you should do. Do not write a state-of-the-art for the entire topic that you're covering. There's a participation paper. Focus on what do you do, what were your plans, and what is the basic research that you need for that. That should be in the state-of-the-art, in your research starting point. Sometimes we see that people somehow go to Google Scholar, select randomly stuff, and then do something completely different. So the state-of-the-art has nothing to do, only the broad topic, with the actual work that you do. So try to get papers that are on a similar task. If there was a previous edition, read the papers from a previous edition, say, I want to do something similar, I want to use another model. That is a new model, then cite a paper from this model. Maybe it worked for another task, and now you want to apply it to the work, to the task in your track. That would be sufficient, but don't just use random stuff. Don't do the random order that the reader has no idea where you're coming from and where you're going. Is there a time order by time or by different approaches? What is your ordering principle in the section? Try to get a narrative. This was a starting point, and we have this model, and somebody brought up a new model. I'm applying now this new model for the task. And avoid short one-sentence summaries of entire papers. That doesn't help the reader anything. Okay. Make your paper interesting. What should you do? Make a short research overview. Cite papers from the same or similar method that you use. Cite the overview papers, maybe of previous tasks, or participant papers of previous editions of the track. And that will give you a really, really better starting point that is focused on your topic. And sometimes we read a lot of citations that just say this was used, and somebody else used this method. Well, how successful were they? We need it should also be part of the state of the art to say, well, they used big data, they used small data, they used this and that benchmark, and they achieved a better accuracy maybe than the previous paper that you have cited. That would give a narrative, for example, for your state of the art section. Let's move to methodology. I think Debasis and Debasis will say more about that also, now how to report well. First questions are, what did you really want to achieve? What is your research question? Maybe trying out these two models that are new for a specific task. That's sufficient motivation, and that would be a good starting point. How did you design your experiments? What was really the overall pipeline maybe that you used, and what were the detailed steps that also make a nice flow in your paper that the reader can follow your work. Report exact models that you used. Often people use existing models, which is very good. Then give really exact name, even maybe a link to Hugging Face or something like that. Also paper that used develop the model, that would be very useful so that the reader can say, aha, exactly this one model was used. Now, if we just write bird, okay, there's millions of bird models nowadays, and that's very unclear. Also report the hyperparameters that you used, sorry, typo there, and make sure that we can re-implement your work. If we use machine learning, then sometimes people are also a bit sloppy. Explain what was the training set, what was the training goal, was it a multi-class problem, single class problem, explain the training and test files, and also the training procedure and all the parameters. Results. Next section is result section. There you provide metrics, typically the ones that are used in your track, and use also tables and graphs. Even if you compare only two models, maybe with two different parameter settings, you have 4 runs, then it's good to have this in a table, and not only in the text, and the reader has to search for that. That's the core result of your paper. Clear table, what did you do and what was the outcome. And we'll hear a lot more about tables later from Debasis. You can also provide other metrics here. If you say, okay, I didn't do well in the share task because they used F1 measure, but I have an excellent accuracy, for example, or I'm very good at a specific subset in the data set. I'm doing very good summaries for long texts, for example. Then that could be maybe not a goal of the share task, but that could be something interesting to also report, and you can be very creative here. That are interesting things. Might also give the track organizers some new ideas even. And also an error analysis can be extremely useful. A deeper look into the data, but also a deeper look into your results. Look at 10 of the maybe classifications that you got wrong and see, is there a pattern? Can you find anything that is worth reporting? Even if you say, okay, we looked at 50 tweets and they had this and that feature, only if it's only anecdotal, it can be interesting. If you don't say, oh, this was statistically significant. No, we had this observation, we saw a trend. Okay, that could give some good ideas for the future. Of course, it's even better if you have the time and really develop a statistically significant result. Okay, yeah. Any questions? No, let me just ask in between. Not, I move on. Then we move to discussion. The discussion is a higher level. I don't just I report the numbers, but I look at what do they mean. We got these numbers, now what do they mean? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they middle? Is there a difference between my approaches, or are they more or less in the margin of randomness on the result? Or did I really manage to say that model A is better than model B? Is there learnings for the future? Right, we tried this, it doesn't work. We don't have to apply it again. We tried enough parameter settings. Forget about this approach. So only add really interesting stuffs here, observations here in the discussions, that are really useful. Citing correctly, that's also a very interesting issue. Debashir, you want to take over from here?
Yeah, I can discuss
Okay,
this part. Thank you,
excellent. Thank
Thomas,
you.
for a
Just let me
wonderful.
know when I have to change the slides.
So, will I share separately or will I just use your slides?
Use my slides. I think it's easier.
Okay, okay. So, as Thomas has already mentioned, that the literature review part and the site attribution of the related work is very important in the paper, okay, because you are basically building your research on what is already existing in the literature. So sometimes the methods that we take are already there and you are slightly improving them or using them in as is form, just the same method applied to a problem. So I think that would be the case in a majority of papers in the shared track, in the shared tasks. Like suppose you will be asked to solve a summarization problem, maybe you will just grab a model from Hugging Face and then apply it to your problem, okay. But who first designed that model, or if you are using some checkpoints which are made available by some author, some other authors, you should mention that in your paper, okay. Otherwise you are kind of using the work but not giving them the right credits. So that's very important in a scholarly work, that you give the proper attribution to prior works on which you depend. And also it is important when you want to uh, state how your work stands with reference or in relative to other works in the domain. For example, if you claim that your work has moved the state of the art, then you need to state what is the state of the art, what are the competing methods. So you need to describe that clearly. You need to cite those papers which give performance which are very good, already very good, and how you improve upon them. That's very important. Then another um, place where citations may be very important is when you are getting some result. So when you get some result and you are trying to explain it, okay, so it may appear that your whatever you're observing is very novel. If you don't say that people have observed it earlier, then it may appear to be very novel to the person who is reading it, but it might be that it has been observed in similar contexts in the past, okay. So if you cite that, then maybe by reading those existing works, the reader can build a bigger picture of what is happening behind the scenes, okay. So sometimes this happens. This doesn't happen always, but sometimes we do get results which are puzzling, which are perplexing apparently, but then might be these results are less common, but they are already existing in the literature. So if you quote or cite relevant papers from the past, that gives the readers a bigger perspective of the whole thing. So as it is mentioned in the paper here, that in when the track owner is writing a, or the task owner is writing an overview paper, then you need to cite the description or task description properly, okay. And in the introduction that is done, okay, so in the introduction you need to mention all the descriptions properly, and then uh, you need to connect your research to the overview of the that integrates all these papers, right? What does the overview paper do? The overview paper is basically a synthesis of the works that are submitted by the participants, okay. So the connection has to be very strong. The one who is writing the overview paper should be gives a overall description of the works that are done, that are being submitted, and that synthesis should be done properly so that people don't lose the thread. and the data set, and whenever the participants are writing their individual papers, they can in turn, I think, cite the overview paper. So I'm not sure. I mean, Thomas, if you are when you are writing the overview paper, so do they mention the individual participants' details also in that overview paper, or so then there will be a
Yes,
certain reference.
we typically write it after the submission, so we look at the
Yeah. So
participants and integrate them.
and the participants in turn will use the overview paper to trace the description of the task, right? Because
Yes,
because the task
yes,
description is given in much greater detail in the overview paper. Okay, so the overview paper is a synthesis of the results that we get from all the individual papers. So if we don't cite the overview paper, what happens is that there's a repetition of material. Okay, because all of them are working on the same task on the same data. So if every participant repeats the same description, then there's just the same things are being repeated over and again. So instead of that, just cite the overview paper. Okay, no need to explain the details of the data set again and again in your individual papers. This is very important, okay, because all of you are writing your own papers separately, but you should keep in mind that there is overview paper and you just need to cite it. Okay, and the BIP text will be available from the track organizer, so you can just simply use that BIP text. Okay, so next slide, please. Yeah. So this is very important. When we are citing the references, then we need to follow a very consistent very consistent method of citing it. So there are lots of different styles of citing, so you should not mix those styles. Okay, so if you go to this LibGuide, you will find that this talks about the different citation styles. For example, IEEE has a particular citation style, ACM has another style, Springer journals, they adopt a different style, and so on. And these styles are typically, they have names like the APA style, then there are multiple others. Okay, so those things have you should not mix them. The thing is that I think there will be a only one style will be recommended in the your template. Just stick to it. That's enough. You need not even explore the different styles. Okay? Yeah. Next, when you talk about writing the references, see on the left you are talking about, we're writing like this: in 2020 19 leveraged, but here see 19 is not part of the sentence, it's just a reference, kind of hyperlink to a different resource out there which you can refer to for more information. So a better way of formulating the same thing is in 2020 Kumar, then in bracket 19 leveraged. So 19 then becomes an additional piece of information which will help you to explore that source on your own. Okay, so this is very important. And if you have multiple authors, typically if you have more than two authors, you use et al. Okay, and if you have two authors, you can simply mention them by name. Three or more, typically et al. Okay, so that's it. Then yeah, another thing is that often this I have seen this mentioned that what researchers do is when you write your related work or some section where you have to kind of trace your method to the past, then what you do is you simply mention a reading list by giving a list of references, but that's not a very good idea. The problem with this is that this does not tell you which one contains what information, which reference contains what information. Okay, so that is not a very good idea. You can mention, I think, one or two references are sometimes mentioned in the reading list, but more than two is not recommended. It's best that you mention each reference, write one or two lines on each, even if you don't want more, but don't put a reading list. That's not a very good idea. Okay. Okay, so when you at the end section, I mean, after you have finished the main content of the paper, then you just have a section called section or a page titled references, where you mention all the sources which you cite in the paper, and you need to ensure that all the sources that you have mentioned in your references section have been cited somewhere in the body of the paper. That's very important. I remember that when we were in our very initial days of PhD or in our undergraduate days, what we used to do is build a very big reference section and even didn't care to cite all of them. Even now, when we see our seminar reference, the seminar reports of our students, sometimes we find that these things are being done. They cite a lot of papers, but all of them are not always cited. Okay, but that's not a good idea at all. Okay, all your references should be cited somewhere in the main body of the paper, and LaTeX will help you do that. If we use Word, then you risk mentioning references which are not cited. Okay, you have to manually track it. Okay, so these are some very nice illustrative examples of how to write down the references. So in case of a single author book, how you would mention, then joint authors, and so on, edited book chapter, and so on. Okay. And yes, another thing, a list of URLs is not a reference list. Okay? It should not be a list of URLs. It should follow a proper format as was illustrated in the previous slide. So you should mention the full reference, which should contain the author names, the name of the publication of the paper, sorry, the venue in which it is published, possibly the obviously the year in which it was published, and in case of a journal, the volume and the issue, and if possible, the page numbers. Okay, so these things should be mentioned, and if the DOI or the URL is available, try to mention it. It's always good to mention it because a single click will take you to that resource. Yeah. So now, how will you get the citation strings, the references, the reference strings, which you will put in your paper? Okay. So one way is that you use Google ResearchGate or you use the more popular Google Scholar. But the problem is that the references here are not very quality controlled. Okay. So you will see that often some references have just the author name and the name of the paper and no other details. Sometimes only the paper name is mentioned, even author names are missing, sometimes year is missing, and so on. Okay, so these problems are there in Google Scholar. Okay, moreover, there are issues like author ambiguity problem. Okay, so the similar authors with similar names have their papers merged together. That happens because of the way Google Scholar indexes these papers, and there is a chance that this will cause very significant errors when you try to use this tool for your reference work. Okay, so you need to use a more authoritative resource, which DBLP is. Okay, so the DBLP repository is a very good repository which contains very quality controlled reference strings which can be used in your papers. So here the slide shows you the problem with Google Scholar, that sometimes the abbreviations are not mentioned. For example, your workshop names or conference names are just mentioned as acronyms. The full names are not present. Sometimes the URLs are missing. Okay, so these problems do not occur when you take the BibTeX from DBLP. Okay, DBLP, you see, it's very properly, very much formatted, and it contains all the required information fields. Okay, so all the fields are filled up properly. The link is given, the abbreviation is explained, and so on. So you should try to use it as much as possible. Okay. Now, one thing is that sometimes I find that all papers are not present in DBLP. Okay, so DBLP doesn't include all computer science publications. So in that case, you have to manually see whether the Google Scholar citation string is complete or not. If it is not complete, for example, the year is missing or the journal or conference details are missing, then you should try to get it from that of the publishers directly and insert it yourself. Okay. Yeah, so right, so here these are examples of good BibTeX. So if you use a proper citation, uh, proper BibTeX along with a proper BIF, your style file, then what you will find is that these issues like capitalization issues will be properly handled. Okay. Now, sometimes what happens is if you take Google Scholar citations, you will find sometimes all the words are in small letters. Sometimes you will find some of the words have their first letters capitalized. Okay, so the best way is that you take a good BibTeX and use it, or if you have to depend on Google Scholar because it's not there in DBLP, then you have to manually handle it. Okay, you have to manually see. We do it in fact. We sometimes do it manually. That BRT BART, so BART should be in capital letters. So you manually make it capital, and when you put it in LaTeX, just enclose it within two parentheses. Okay, within a pair of parentheses, so that when the citation is displayed, then it is properly shown in, uh, if it should be in capital, it will appear in caps. Yeah, quotes should be properly used. Now, if you use the BibTeX properly, then that is automatically taken care of. Otherwise, the practice is that before you have the closing quote, your comma should be given. But that's actually very more of a style, right? I mean, the way these publishers do it, it has more to do with some archaic mechanism of how these quotations are placed. Not much important, but you should, I mean, these punctuation issues, these are very difficult to handle manually. The best way is you use proper BibTeX file. Okay, instead of using Word, use LaTeX and use the proper BibTeX. Then that will be taken care of. Okay. Here also, here you see that the references should be placed. So probably what we want is, as we read the paper, we want to draw the connection of the content of the paper with the references out there. Okay, so one way is that you order reference list according to say the alphabetical order or according to the year of publication, or the other way is that you just order them according to their occurrence, their citation order in the paper. Okay, so the user needs to see, as we read the paper, the user needs, what the user would like to see is the sections, whatever your statements you are making within the paper, they can be traced back to the references. Okay, so there should, so whenever you are making a statement which is non-trivial, which is not a very well accepted fact, which is not common knowledge, then try to give a citation for the same, okay, so that it can be traced back. Yes. Okay, now I give it over again to Thomas to discuss the plagiarism related issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Devashi. Very nice. Briefly put into plagiarism. We also have some issues with self-plagiarism. People maybe cite their previous work that can then lead also to rejection if the similarity is too high. Be aware that all of the ideas, all of the text should come from you. You are the author, and if you use something from somebody else, then give credit. Like Debashi put it, they deserve credit for whatever they developed. You also should, you are writers, not just a typer, not just a copier. Yeah, use quotation marks when you quote directly, which is not so often the case. And if you have phrases or ideas, then just use a citation. Yes, we don't have to spend too much here. We will talk about more I use, but these papers should be your ideas, your opinions, your results, and not just somebody said something. And don't just patch paraphrase and summaries together. So please write in your own words. And if you're unsure about your writing quality, write in your own words and then use tools to improve your text later. So, okay, writing process, I guess we can leave this very open. There are different, it's difficult to say write in this way or that way because people are very different. Some need a table of contents before they start, others they have to start and then later they see where it develops. So that's quite different. There's also a link here if you want to find out more. Also to become a good writer and write good papers. Remember when you read something and there was a good flow, it really sounded nice, a good computer science paper. Then look at that again and see how did they do it, how do they create their flow and try to make it similar. So learn from others, of course, don't copy them. Yeah, and often we have people have difficulties in organizing sentences and paragraphs. We often see repetition in even short papers. Think about what do you want to say. Often in academic writing, people say there should be a topic sentence, something that starts off the overview, the topic, and then the rest of the paragraph is just elaborating on this, adding to this, giving more arguments, giving examples. And when you come to a new idea, then you put a new paragraph with a new topic sentence at the beginning. Use of AI, already one of the last topics that I will explore before I hand over. Of course, we don't want papers that are completely AI developed. On the other hand, of course, there are ways that AI can help us to make better readable text. And then it's absolutely fine to use it. And however, of course, it needs to be declared. There is also this requirement now from CEUR to declare, did you use AI? How did you use it? Now, they might still change that declaration still, like many universities do at the moment. So stay posted for a moment, but remember, how did you use any tools that you have applied in your writing process? I start with a few ideas here. I will also give an OER on this topic. For example, microstructure, which is the internal structure, the flow between sentences, between paragraphs, sentence clarity. Do we have clear sentences that have one idea, that are not endless and that are well formulated? That can all be defined under microstructure. And what Jim O'Reilly suggests, I will also provide his nice infographic. I'll just use some excerpts here, how can I use AI tools to improve my writing? Well, how can you use it really to, for example, just for your microstructure? Then use terms and concepts from academic writing in your prompts when you guide the AI system to help you. For example, topic sentence, flow, these are things that you can integrate in your prompts. We have some ideas here. Think meta-linguistically or use linguistic concepts from iteratively. For example, some ideas here again from Jim O'Reilly. He says, does this sentence follow a tripartite structure? Topic, sentence, elaboration, conclusion. If not, please suggest a revision and explain changes made. This will give you maybe a much better and for you informed improvement on your current paragraph than just saying, okay, AI, please write this for me. Then you have much less control and this will help you. Or please check, is there a logical flow in my paragraph in this section? And if not, please suggest changes and explain them to me. Then you always also will learn in the long term from working with AI and not even lose your writing skills or not improve them. Or de-skilling, that's not what we want. We should want to get better papers, but also improve in ourselves in writing using these tools. Okay, so these are just some examples. There are more in this OER, the Open Educational Resource, that I will also add in the link here. And with that, our format templates, there will be also, Debasis will talk a bit more about that. The template for COR proceedings has been changed, so we will send it out later. Remember, do not change the format. Just add your text. Be very careful with deleting brackets, parentheses. Just add your data in between and your metadata, and don't change styles within this template. There is formal checks, there are automatic checks. The entire proceedings will get rejected if you have the wrong format. For example, just one example, the footer, there's lots of information there that you enter in your fields. Emails will give you the conference string, but the rest you have to put yourself. ORCID IDs, for example, and none of these formats, these the fonts and etc. should be changed. Just keep it and be very careful when you modify and edit that. Yeah, a few typical mistakes before I hand over. Language is full of errors. No? People are not very skilled in writing, do it very quickly, and something bad comes out, and things that even a grammar or spelling checker would find. Those things are not acceptable nowadays anymore. That's also due to AI and tools that we have. Use, for example, a tool like Quillbot. That doesn't do the writing for you, but it explains you and highlights issues and suggests reformulations. And then you can see, is this what I really wanted to say? Is it a better formulation? And then why not use it, right? But you, of course, are responsible and have to make sure that this is really what you wanted to say. And don't fall for these typical AI phrases, nuanced, and all of these words that we read so much now that are typical ChatGPT slang. Or DeepL Writer, another tool that will highlight your mistakes and improve your writing, right? Even I use it, it's very helpful. And it's also, you will learn more than if you just ask ChatGPT for a complete section or something. Yeah. Any open questions at the moment? Otherwise, I would hand on to Debasis. Just a second, I will give you the presenter rights. Yes, please.
Yeah, there's a question.
Sure, please go ahead. Dasha.
Good evening, sir. So I had some doubts regarding paper writing, what we discussed right now. for example, you explained the state of the art section. If I wanted to confirm my understanding, is it analogous to the literature review or related work section, or is it something
Yes,
else?
yes, that's
Okay,
has different names: literature review, related work, state of the art. No?
got it, sir.
It's
Also,
all the
sir,
same.
for in the methodology side, there was mentioned that the training dataset and problem definition details, are they preferred to be given in the methodology section itself, or should we like mention a, small dataset and problem definition section?
I think you can do both, but the problem could already be described broadly in the introduction and then in methodology at the beginning. Then you could have maybe number 3 is methodology, 3.1 is details about the research questions.
So, like, should we include the details of the dataset inside the methodology or a small section separately?
The data set. Yeah. No, I think you don't need to write about the data collection. That is done in the overview paper. No, otherwise we have 20 descriptions of the data set. That is done in the
Mhm.
overview. You just cite it. You say we use the data from whatever track, DBLR track or whatever, 2025, and then give a reference to the overview paper, and then everybody knows what is done. You
Yes,
can
like
mention,
I
of
want
course,
to
the
ask,
size.
what what is the exactly what is expected in the overview paper? Like, is it a section or a different paper? I wasn't able to understand it clearly. Like, what is expected in the overview paper?
The overview paper is not written by you. That's written by the track organizers.
Okay,
And they will say, okay, we have provided this data. How did we create it? How big is it? Where is the origin? What were the steps that we did to get to this data? And then
okay.
later in
So
the
we can
overview
write.
paper, Mhm.
So we are directly expected to refer to the overview paper.
Exactly.
Got it.
You can mention
And last
briefly,
question:
yeah.
what is the expected format of the paper? Like a standard IEEE format, or some other
No.
format?
CEUR, no, CEUR, I will put a link later when Debasis is talking, and you
Okay,
can go to the old proceedings and check them. We will give you the template.
okay. And so, what is the
But
max page limit?
there is no real max page limit. It can be between 6, typically maybe 10, depending on how many experiments did you do. But you can
Got
go
it,
on
sir.
for longer. If you do very many experiments, have very many results and observations, you can write 20, 30 pages also.
Thank you so much, sir, for the responses.
Uh-huh.
Should
There is
I,
also an
should I
overview.
try sharing my screen, Thomas?
Yes, Debasis, you should have a new plus now, or you have
Yeah,
one option to screen share.
yeah, I can see the button. Let me try to press the button. Yeah,
You can upload or screen share as you prefer.
yeah, it should work. Window, entire
I,
screen.
I gave you presentation rights, yes. There is also another question, meanwhile. 2 runs, each with different architecture. Only one run got selected. Okay, that in the overview paper and accepted as a submission. That's okay, but you can still in your paper describe both. You can say we did 2 runs, describe them exactly what you did, and say only run 2 was used in the official results. The other was not because of whatever issue, maybe performance was too low or it was random. You can even do experiments after submission and say, hey, now we have the good idea. Now we got a very good result. It's an unofficial run. It was not submitted on time, but it's still something you can put into your participation paper. Don't hesitate to put more things in the paper. Yeah, the LaTeX format, we will distribute the format. Yeah, we will get the format from GUR already at the string for the conference, the correct string, and then the track organizers will send it out to you. Now, we wait until the last minute for that because they often change their format recently. So that's why we have not distributed it. You will get it. You can now have a look at CUR, but we will already do some modification there for you. Okay, question so far answered, I hope. There will be also more time for questions later, no? But maybe Debas's time flies, no? Maybe you wanna go.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thanks a lot, Thomas, for the very nice introduction to writing tricks and tips. So my overview presentation is also going to be on a similar topic, but I'm going to skip the things that you already have covered. So I'm just going to, just for a start, so I am a lecturer at the University of Glasgow, and these slides were not by me. These slides were prepared by Sean McAveny, who is my colleague in information retrieval. But I just reused his slides by taking permission from him. I don't think he minds that much. He is in love with fire as well. He has given a talk maybe a couple of years back, so he supports the community very much. So yeah, I mean, to have a start, so this is a like some good points that you should keep in mind about writing a good introduction. So this is the first thing that you have in your mind, right? I mean, you already know what to write in your approach because you already have tried out certain things. So you basically know what to write in the main sections of the paper. You have your results and all that. So you have your data sets. So you basically already know what to write. But introduction is the most tricky part that all students kind of struggle with because they are not really sure of what to write in the introduction. So I think I basically follow this structure over here that these are the 5 different things that you should try to put in an introduction. It should really start with what is the task that you are doing at a very high level. If you do not describe what the task is, it's very easy for the reader to lose anything or to get any motivation about the things that you are working with. So if he doesn't get any motivation to read the further sections of the paper, probably he's not going to read the other parts of the paper. So I think it's really, really important to make sure to describe at a very high level, not at a very detailed level in the introduction section, like what is the task. And then the next thing that you should do is why is this important to do? I mean, the task is something that you specify at a very high level, but why would anybody be interested in the task? So for an example, if you say, okay, the task that you are doing is, I don't know, question answering, you can find a reason for why question answering, is an important task because you are looking for answers, you need to find out information, but you want to do it quickly. So you don't want to have too much of cognitive load in finding out the answers yourself. So, a good question answering system is going to provide answers to the questions that you might have, right? So it is a task of high practical utility. Similarly, consider other tasks like image search. So you can surely find out like why is that task important because you want to find similar images and stuff like that. And then you should describe a very high-level overview of what others have done in the field. So if you say like, what is the task and why is it important? And then you need to provide at a very high level. Don't just go on and then write lots and lots of related work because you have a separate section for that. But in this section, you basically say at a very high level, what are the state-of-the-art things that people have tried out for this task? So let's say, I don't know, for information retrieval or for question answering, people have tried out many different approaches, like the most recent ones being RAG-based approaches. So you can mention that at a very high level in the introduction. And then you need to say where is the gap, okay? Like what are the limitations, again, at a very high level of those existing approaches, so that before even describing your proposed approach, you need to mention what is the gap, and then you can talk about that gap and then say at a very high level again, like what is it that you have done to address that gap, okay? So these are the 5 recipes or the 5 important ingredients for writing an introduction. Okay. So then there are some tricks and tips that you should follow for good writing. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. So the first is the word choice that you will write in your paper. So try not to use weasels like typically the adjectives and the adverbs that they don't mean anything. You just add them and then it just confuses readers, right? So don't use terms like very or fairly. Use precise terms. Okay, so I don't know. So potentially improving, that doesn't really tell you anything. So try to use the adverbs and adjectives as much as possible. Okay. And certainly some of the words you should avoid at all costs, like very, you don't use very at all. Okay. Maybe if you want to say significantly or substantially or considerably, you can use those kind of words. But if you are using significantly, then that has got a statistical interpretation to it. So like if you are not doing any significance test, then don't use that word significantly. Okay. If you are using significance test, with a pair t-test or Wilcoxon test or whatever, then you can use that. And if you see that your method is significantly better than the baseline, then you can use that word significantly. Otherwise, don't use that. Which, if you use which, try to avoid which. Try not to have very long sentences, but try to write things down in shorter sentences, because it's easier for readers to read, and that's the de facto standard for technical documents, that you don't usually write long sentences. If anyway you have to write long sentences, then if you are using which to connect the two clauses, make sure that you use a comma. Okay, so which should only be used as a clause used as a connective to connect two clauses, but it has to have a comma before it appears. Try not to use words like utilize. Instead, we should try to use, that we use this model or we employed this model. Don't say that we utilize this model, because that doesn't really make any sense. Okay, about the tense that you will use in the paper, I've seen people confuse a lot and be like inconsistent, when it comes to tenses and all. I've seen people use present and past tense interchangeably, but you should not do that. Everything you should write should be in the present tense. It's as if, you have done the experiments in the past, but, when you are proposing a method, you have thought about it in the past, but you are presenting it to the reader. It's as if you are there in person, reading it out to the readers, right? So you should talk in present tense, because it shows that the author is engaged with the audience or with the reader. So you have to use everything in the present tense, except maybe in the related work where it makes sense to say that, okay, so somebody has already done that. Somebody had done that in the past, right? So then you can use past tense, but don't use perfect tense, use simple past. So do not use perfect tense at all in writing technical documents. You should always use either simple present, mostly simple present, or in sometimes, for the related work section, just use simple past. Only for the conclusions work, sometimes people prefer to use past tense because it's something that you already have shown in the paper, but other authors often use present tense. Again, as I said, it's like, trying to engage with the audience, and it's always better to use simple present tense. But whatever you do, be consistent. Don't mix things up. And future work is the only thing where you will use future tense. Don't use future tense anywhere else in the paper. Okay. So Thomas has already talked about citations, and Deburshi, I think, has talked about that as well. So I remember that he mentioned about cite T and cite P. So I'll just give you an example here. So cite T is usually something that you'll use when you say that authors XYZ proposed something. So then you have to use cite T, because then it appears as, XYZ. So it's just the author's name that appears within brackets the year of the work. So that's when you use cite T. So cite T is usually to be used when it's an active sentence. So when you say those authors proposed that, or that work proposed this, then you use cite T. For every other occasion, when you just want to add, let's say you want to make a claim, and then you just want to add the citation to support that claim. So just use cite P for that. You don't use cite T. So cite T is only to be used when you use active voice and that citation is a part of the sentence. If not, if it's just something like something that you add to the last of the sentence, then it's a cite P. Okay, so it's not a part of the sentence anymore. It just supports your claim. Okay. And yeah, as Devoshi already said, so you can use multiple citations, but make sure that you don't use a space. So it's okay to use ABC, comma, DEF, but sometimes I've seen people use a space in some. So the issue with the space is that it works in some format. It doesn't work in any other form, in some other formats, right? So just to be making sure that whatever you type in LaTeX works across all style files, just don't use that space. Okay, so just use ABC, comma, DEF. So another problem with the citations is that you need to use a space, when you are citing something like, I don't know, it's either a section that you are citing or even a paper that you are citing with the cite command, or with the ref. With ref, you can cite a figure or a section. Always have a space. So the space here is this white space character, the tilde sign that you see here. So that's for the white space. So if you don't use that, if you use just a white space and not this character there, what LaTeX can do is it can split things up in white space, because it can treat white space as new lines as well. Okay, so then you can have something like section, and then since LaTeX treats that as white space, it can insert new line there, right? And then you can have the name here. So it looks very bad. Okay, so do not do this. But if you use that tilde sign, it's never going to split that thing. Section 5.1 is going to appear as a string itself. In which case, it will adjust space, and then it will put section 5.1 in the next line. Okay, so that's what we want to see. If you forget about this every time, like I remember it every time, so there is no need to remind me of this, because I'm used to this. But if you're new to LaTeX, and then a good thing to use is to use the CleverRef package. So CleverRef does it automatically for you. So you can use CleverRef just like you are using ref, but you can not have the tilde character in there. So right, it will take care of that automatically. Okay, so CleverRef package is a good thing to use. Okay. One of the things that, especially if you're doing, for your case, it's not anonymous submissions, but in some cases, if you're submitting papers to a conference, let's say you have participated in a track, you have found out some good results maybe last year, and then you want to extend that to a conference paper to this year's FIRE track, right? But the FIRE conference track papers are anonymous, which means that you cannot just disclose your entity. Okay. So often a mistake that we do is, like, when we are citing stuff, maybe there is something that reveals our entity, right? So we should take care that it's not the case. So for example, here, it is, when you say it is also used by OpenNIR and then cite something, okay, so maybe you are disclosing, maybe OpenNIR is a well-known tool, and then people can easily find like who are the authors involved, right? So do not do that. If you are citing some archive paper, don't, the link should not contain, your name and all that. So here in this case, it clearly has Sean McAvin's name in there. So if anybody looks at that URL, you can figure out that it's his work, right? So try not to disclose entities, disclose names like that, okay? Because this can lead to clear desk rejects. If the reviewer finds out your names from the paper, you are not able to hide your identity, then in that case it can be a desk reject. Okay. Another thing is about the placement of the figures in the tables. So I've seen people not really understand what these means. So they put something like begin figure and then they just use H. H is not a good thing to do. Okay. And worse is to use H with the exclamation mark. If you're putting something with the exclamation mark, so you're kind of forcing LaTeX to put that figure right there, okay, where you are like putting that begin figure, end figure blocks. It tries to put it in that part of the document, which is not a good thing to do. LaTeX is very good at figuring out space and managing space by itself. You should not try to override its default behavior. Okay, so H is probably okay, because if you want to put that figure right in the middle of text, but usually it's not a good practice, because you are wasting a line of space. If you're doing that, it's always good to place a figure at the top or maybe at the bottom. Okay, so try to put T but don't use T exclamation. Okay, so then you are forcing LaTeX to change its default behavior. So try to use something like a TB or a TBH. Okay, if you really want to do that, you have to put in something in there, because if you don't put in something, the default behavior is not specified. So you have to put T. I prefer to put T, but some authors do T and B both. Okay. Equations, you need to understand that equations are part of the sentence itself. So when you have something like, maybe, you want to combine two loss functions and then you have a combined loss, you have to remember that this is a part of the text itself. Okay. And then you cannot just say where, with a capital, because the sentence is not ended there. Okay. So if you want to use where, if you want to stop that sentence, then put a dot after your equation. It's the full stop, the period. And then you can start in equation so and so. It's a new sentence then. If you want to continue the sentence, then you have to use where. So then maybe then put a comma here. Some authors don't put the comma. I put a comma. I put a comma and a dot because it's a part of the sentence itself. And then if you put the comma here, then where starts on the next line. And it's not a new paragraph, so you don't need the indentation after that, right? So you just start as if it's a continuation of that same sentence. Okay, so tables is an important part, because if you're working on experiments and stuff, you have lots of results. It usually takes a lot of time to come up with LaTeX tables, especially if you're not aware of the LaTeX syntax of how to create tables. But there are tools that can do that for you. There are table generators, and now you can use ChatGPT and all that. But then, if you're just using data frame in Python, it already has a toLaTeX function that can generate LaTeX code for you. But nowadays, I don't think people use that anymore. People use generative AI, so you can use ChatGPT to format your tables and all that. And ChatGPT is quite good at creating tables. Okay. Okay, creating tables is not that difficult, but figuring out a layout for the table is very important, because you can easily confuse the reader if your table structure is not reader friendly. People will have a hard time to interpret your results, and maybe you are then underselling your own work. So you need to, if you want to sell your idea and sell your work properly, then you should really make sure that the table is formatted correctly, because often, we don't have enough time to read through the whole paper. So we often typically take a glance at the results of a paper, which means that we typically take a glance at the table. Okay. Now, if the table is kind of self-contained, with meaningful captions and, with easy to understand format, then it's pretty easy to grasp the main observations in the paper reported. If it's not, then the readers have to really go through the text. A very bad example is if it's a very short caption of the table and then nothing you can interpret, maybe the column names are also not that good, which means that you need to go and read through the text and then figure out what was being reported, which is not a good thing to do. Okay, so then you are underselling yourself. Okay. So having said that, so here are some tips that you should keep in mind when creating tables. So one of the things that you need to make the table look good. If the numbers are not aligned, if the columns are not aligned, it doesn't look good, and then you can easily lose interest. The reader can easily lose interest in the paper itself. So try to align all your numbers, okay, so as to make them more easily visible to the reader. Okay, and yeah, it also looks good. It also makes an aesthetic. Aesthetically, it looks pleasing in that sense. And it helps the reader to make meaningful comparisons. That's the main point. Okay. Okay. Make sure that the digits in numbers are aligned as well. Like here in this case, you can see that there's a gap between 54 and 68, so it's not really aligned. So it has to be aligned exactly, right? So try to do that. If there are no gaps between your methods, like let's say these are 3 different methods for which you're reporting observations, but there is no gap, then things are not really visible to the reader, right? So you need to have a gap between the different types of experiment settings, like different methods on which you are reporting results. So while this is good, having a gap between the column sets, this is not good, because in this case, there is no clear demarcation between the column sets at all, okay? So this one is better. Always try to keep the numbers that you want to compare close to each other. And when I say close to each other, it's not just about spatially close. Like, in this case, it's a bad practice to write it this way because these are evaluation measures, okay? Whereas these are the methods on which you are computing those evaluation measures. In this case, you want to compare between the methods and not compare between the metrics. So comparison between the metrics is an apples to orange comparison because you cannot compare precision with recall because they are two different measures, okay? You cannot compare directly F-score and accuracy. They are correlated, but you cannot make those observations directly. So in this case, I don't want to look at and compare across 20.83 and 32.67. I don't want to do that. There is no point of keeping them close like this or in rows like this. We usually have the default sense that, okay, in the rows, we'll have the method names so that, I can scan through each row, check the metric values. The metric should be in columns. And then I know that, okay, so that's the first row, that's the baseline. Maybe the second row is another baseline. And the third row is our method so that I can quickly see that, okay, so across the rows, how are these numbers changing? So that makes more intuitive sense than doing it this way, okay? In this case, the problem is, if you fix a metric, let's say accuracy, 20.83, this method over here, gives you that value, and this method over here gives you another value. You want to compare these two numbers, but these numbers are far apart, spatially. They are not spatially adjacent to each other, which makes it more difficult for the reader to understand anything that you want to say. So if they just look at this table trying to understand what numbers to compare with what, they won't be able to do that, okay? So in this case, since I want to compare 20.83 with 7.27, try to have a different grouping of the columns. In this case, it's a bad grouping of the columns because I don't want to compare fine-tuning with PLET. These are two different settings of the same model, which I don't want to compare. I want to compare across different models. So I want to compare FewNerd with onto nodes, okay? And with the same setting. So I need to have done the table other way around, okay? So I needed to group the columns by fine-tuning and PLET. And in fine-tuning, I needed to have three different column sets, FewNerd, onto nodes, and BBM, so that I could have these numbers side by side, okay? Yeah. I think that's pretty much it about the tables. Yeah, this is the same thing that I said, just need to have, like in this case, having evaluation measure, although you can have it, but then, it's very counterintuitive, right? We don't want to have that. But this is clearly wrong. I mean, try to have things that we want to compare side by side. That's the thing that you should really take care of. If you are posting on archive, so one of the common mistakes that we do is that we just put the whole LaTeX source on archive, but we keep forgetting that there are comments in our LaTeX code, okay? And often there are some meaningless comments that automatic information extraction systems can pick up, or even like if somebody is looking at your code from the LaTeX, from the archive, they can read these comments, which you don't really want other people to read. I mean, say, for example, if you had made a note to yourself, this seems incorrect, you don't want other people to read this comment of yours, right? So try to make sure there are packages which you should use. The package that I want to mention is this archive LaTeX cleaner. So before you put something on the archive, so make sure that you run this through this package, archive LaTeX cleaner, to make sure that there are no spurious comments and that can reveal something that you don't want other people to read in your paper. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I will stop and then I'm happy to take questions from you if you have some.
So thank you very much, Debasis. No? Maybe it would be interesting task to exploit these undesired comments on archive and see what and categorize them or something. No? Could be a fun task. But yeah, I answered some things in the chat, but let's see if there are more questions. Feel free to ask anything. There are no stupid questions.
I think there is a question, right? So Oh yeah, you already answered them. Yeah.
I
Okay,
tried to answer also of them. If I forgot some, please just repeat. Active voice is okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
often
active voice is
passive.
preferred. I think, as it shows like direct engagement with the reader, which I usually prefer.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, active voice is also more assertive because it shows that you are really confident about what you are saying. Otherwise, if it's passive voice, it appears as an English speaker. I'm not a native speaker, but as a native English speaker, they might interpret that as some kind of a not that confident kind of assertion. Whereas it comes like with more confidence if it's active voice.
Absolutely easier to read. Also, yes. You can also
Sir,
do
may
some
I
additional
ask a
experiments.
question?
Ah,
This side,
Praveen,
Praveen, sir. Yes, sir.
please go ahead.
Sir, you said in the review of literature, we may use the past tense, but in the analysis and the results part,
Yes.
should go in the present tense.
Yeah, of course you should.
So,
Although you have done your experiments maybe 1 month back or a couple of weeks back, but
right.
that's something that you are not going to write. You're going to write that in present tense because the results are still valid. It's not that you have done that experiment 2 weeks back and the results are not valid anymore, right? The observations are still valid, and it's going to be valid, unless something else invalidates it. So that's why you should write in present tense, because they're still valid.
So, what
And as
about
I
the
said, it shows
consistency?
direct engagement with the audience.
What about the consistency throughout the paper in that case?
Yeah, so
Consistency
it's
of the
because
use
you
of
use
tense.
simple present tense. Okay, only for the related work you have to use past tense because you are talking about other people's work.
Right.
Then even then, if you want to comment about something, you can still use present tense. You can
Right.
say that they showed that, but something like, okay, you can make a general observation about the state of the art, and that's like still in present tense.
Okay.
So you can use both present and past in the conclusion section, but try to use only one. I mean, don't mix between the two.
Okay.
Okay?
And for the track organizers, you'll be sharing the template
Yes.
to prepare the working notes, overview
Yes,
of the shared task.
If you just Google for Seaward overlift template, you can just use that template and then prepare your Seaward style.
You can start, but we will distribute one where we already put the correct conference information. So that is one level of error less, but you can have a look at it already.
Yeah, that'll be cleaner actually. Yeah.
So
further questions?
similarly, organizers will also will sharing the template for the participants as well, share task participants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you will get that from the share task or a link to our website where we can put that.
Right. It was a good to listen to three of you, because many things we do, but still the regularly committed mistakes, or we take things lightly when we quote somebody but we don't cite, or we don't put them in the reference. All these
Yeah.
are the practical problems. Thank you.
I mean, that's the very purpose that we're having the workshop, because we understand that you are like students, we're doing
Yes.
coursework mainly.
Right.
So I think it's important for you to do experiments for your project maybe, but then when it comes to writing stuff, you are not used to it.
Yes.
So I think it just gives you the practice that you need to be able to. It shows you that it's not a difficult task. I mean, you often tend to think that it's very difficult to write papers, but it's not. I mean, with the right tools, it's actually much easier than doing your experiments. You already have done the hard part, so 90% of the hard work is done. Now it's just the 10% that you need to be careful of, which you think that it's very difficult, but it's actually not. So that's the whole purpose of this workshop, to promote good writing. Yeah.
Absolutely right. It's really the easy part, and all of what we said is no magic. All of that can be easily observed, and If you just know about it, maybe you don't know before, that's very natural. You don't think about this, but it really can kill the whole proceedings. And with some good ideas, your ideas are clearer. You later, if you keep publishing, you might get better cited if people can read your papers better. All of that is really, really useful.
Yeah, it
Don't
will be a
try.
shame if you have really worked on certain things and then you have got some good results, but then just because you are afraid to write, maybe you just don't go ahead and then try sometimes. But it means that you are losing out on the good work that you have done. So put some effort. You don't need to have much effort because there are already tools available to help you out. Just follow some good practices and then you can sell your work much better. You can get a publication out of it and you can show the world through your Citus Google Scholar page that, okay, hey, I've got a paper in my undergrad days, okay, which is quite good.
You can easily do it. And that's also, some people said, we lose a lot of people who submit results and don't submit the paper. I think it's also a shame. You did most of the work. And even if your results are not good, it's valuable for seeing, oh, what is the scope of all experiments that were done? Because this is a shared task. You explore many different options, some strange ideas maybe. And then, that was done already. We don't have to do it again. That's all. Even bad experiments, bad results should be published. And you can also do after experiments, right? If you say, oh, actually, we did a mistake. Let's do all again. Deadline is over. Still, you can describe it. Say this was done later. No problem. Again, we see, another thing was explored.
So I think the more important thing here, okay, you can fail. I mean, you have tried out something, maybe that failed, that didn't, turn out to be the best method, but don't get disheartened by that. I think what's more important is to do the analysis of why it has failed. And maybe do some later analysis, as Thomas is saying, you can say that, okay, we tried that one out, but now, we make this small tweak. And then now, if we run this, we get these kind of results, which is even better than the officially best results. So try to do some analysis like that.
Exactly. No? Even the overview paper might say, oh, this was submitted late, but it's the best result. No, it's not in the official ranking, but actually it's better. Well, then people might cite you later for that. So
I think I have done that, during my PhD days, when maybe, it wasn't the best method that that turned out to be the best method in that track. But later on, after I get the ground truth, I do some further analysis, while writing this track paper. And then I see that, okay, I can even beat the best results. And I can put that in the track notes, in the working notes of the track.
Some people are typing. We wait a little bit. So
Yeah.
if there are more questions, you can use the microphone, but typing is also fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, you can speak up. Just speak up. Don't be shy.
Yeah, it's a small group. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We can even turn off the recording because that might also put some people off. No? So we end the recording and then the rest of the discussion will be kind of not published. No?
Yeah.